Increasing artillery exchanges between Israel and Hezbollah have heightened fears of a new front opening in the war. On Thursday, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Beirut will be left devastated like Gaza if the Lebanon-based Hezbollah starts a war. Netanyahu and his Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, accompanied with the Chief of General Staff, met staff officers and other soldiers at the Army Northern Command. And Antony Blinken, meanwhile, welcomed an Israeli probe into a strike that killed a journalist and wounded 6 others on October 13th in southern Lebanon. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida stepped down as chief of his faction in the ruling Liberal Democratic Party, and this comes amid LDP lawmakers facing scrutiny over underreporting their fundraising proceeds. Now the scandal threatens to further dent Kishida's sinking popularity. According to local media, prosecutors will start investigating Liberal Democratic Party lawmakers on why fundraising proceeds of over $680,000 are not in official records. And the money was raised from ticket sales to party events, and some of it was given directly to the lawmakers and left off the books. The Supreme Court of India is set to deliver its verdict on a batch of petitions challenging the central government's decision to revoke Article 370 of the Constitution. And the verdict will be delivered on December 11th. Now, the Constitution bench had heard arguments in the matter for 16 days. Revoking Article 370 that granted a special autonomous status to the region of Jammu and Kashmir was a historic move by the Indian government in August 2019. Article 370 allowing Jammu and Kashmir to have its own constitution, flag and a significant degree of autonomy over internal matters, except defense, communication and foreign affairs. Australia has signed a contract with South Korea's Hanwha Aerospace to receive 129 Red-back infantry fighting vehicles by 2028. In July, Australia picked Hanwha as a preferred bidder for the project worth $2.4 billion. And according to Deputy Prime Minister, the vehicles will play a huge role in improving the capability of the Australian Defence Force. Australia's Defence Ministry expects the project to support 2,100 jobs, including 1,800 direct jobs, with the first vehicles to be delivered in 2027. French President Emmanuel Macron has welcomed Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban in Paris for working dinner. Now, the two leaders will discuss support to Ukraine, the Israel-Hamas and European Union-related matters ranging from budget to defense. The meeting comes ahead of a European summit next week, at which talks on Ukraine's joining the bloc and financial aid for Kyiv are expected to meet resistance from Orban. Donald Trump was back in court on Thursday for his New York civil trial on fraud allegations. Trump once again condemned the process, calling it unfair. Now, the former U.S. president and his 2 eldest sons are accused of inflating the value of their real estate assets to receive favorable bank loans and insurance terms. And during the trial, Trump has called the judge in the case, Arthur Engoron, crazy and unhinged. The frontrunner for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination denounced New York State Attorney General Letitia James, who is black, as corrupt and racist. Trump, who testified on November 6th and is expected to again take the witness stand on December 11th, was in court as a spectator on Thursday. Demonstrators gathered in Argentinian capital Buenos Aires to demand the release of all Hamas hostages. While urging their government to condemn Hamas, the protesters wanted the outgoing government of President Alberto Fernandez to declare Hamas as a quote-unquote terrorist organization. The demonstrators carried pictures of hostages and photographs of children kidnapped by Hamas. President-elect Javier Milei in his campaign had said that he would have a pro-Israel foreign policy and expressed his desire to move the Argentine embassy in Israel to Jerusalem.
Quiero ser muy claro. El Estado argentino tiene que comprometer a los 137 padres, hijos.
Quiero hablarles acerca de mi familia.
A casa. La vida es...
The Reserve Bank of India has hiked the limit of online transactions, also called the Unified Payment Interface, to about $6,000, and the per transaction raise has been allowed for hospitals and educational institutes. Now, the announcement was trumpeted while unveiling the country's December bi-monthly monetary policy, and the limit for recurring e-mandates has also been pushed to about $1,200, a move that the Indian government expects will accelerate the use of e-payments. India's state Telangana former Chief Minister and Bharat Rashtra Samiti, commonly known as BRS, Chief K. Chandrasekhar Rao sustained injuries in a fall at his farmhouse, and Rao suffered a hip bone fracture and is being evaluated for the surgery. Now, the development comes on the heels of the party's defeat in the Telangana Legislative Assembly election. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has wished Rao a speedy recovery and good health. Former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has said the suggestions that he wanted to allow the COVID-19 virus to rip through population were completely wrong. He also refuted the portrayal of partying in Downing Street during the second day of the public questioning and called it quote-unquote absurd. The former Prime Minister was forced to quit from office last year. And after public anger erupted over the COVID lockdown breaching parties called Partygate, the former Prime Minister insisted that the public's perception on the Partygate scandal was quote-unquote a million miles from reality of what happened. He in fact claimed that the hundreds of civil servants were working hard and followed the rules. The UK and US governments have accused Russian intelligence of orchestrating a wide-ranging hacking campaign. They said Russia is targeting British MPs, civil servants and journalists to meddle in UK's next general elections. Now, 2 Russians have been sanctioned for their involvement in the alleged spying. Moscow has denied these allegations. The 2 accused allegedly have links with Russia's Federal Security Service. And UK's Foreign Affairs Minister David Cameron said that Russia's cyber attacks threaten the democratic processes of the country. The incident comes amid expectations that Prime Minister Rishi Sunak will call a general election next year. China's largest fishery research vessel is on its first overseas mission to survey fishery resources in the Indian Ocean. And according to reports, China wants to change its image as a greedy consumer of global fish stock and instead acquire greater say in the fishery industry's governance. The voyage of 3,000-ton scientific survey vessel Lanhai 201 will cover 100 sites over 4 months. It will assess the volume and biological diversity of fishery resources around major fisheries and try to integrate China's distant water fisheries into its Belt and Road Initiative. A 5.8 magnitude earthquake jolted parts of central Mexico, shaking buildings in the Mexican capital and sending anxious residents out into the streets. Now, there have been no immediate reports of damages yet. And according to the U.S. Geological Survey, the earthquake's epicenter was the central state of Puebla, south of Mexico City. Earthquake alarms blared throughout the Mexico City, sending people running out of businesses and homes. Barely 2 months after U.S. President Joe Biden visited Vietnam, President Xi Jinping is set to visit neighboring Hanoi next week to push for deeper ties with the socialist neighbors. The December 12 to 13 state visit is expected to promote partnerships between China and Vietnam in the areas of political security and multilateral and maritime issues. Now, China is Vietnam's largest trading partner and a vital source of imports for its manufacturing sector. So this visit comes when both China and the United States are jostling for influence among Southeast Asian nations, including Vietnam. Nestling among the trees of a reserve in Mexico, scores of monarch butterflies have moved into their winter home to escape the chilly temperatures of Canada. The majestic spectacle is a delight to the visitors. And every year, the migratory monarchs travel up to 3,000 kilometers from Canada to spend the winter among the forests of Mexico. This trip south is not an easy one for the fragile butterflies. Scientists generally agree that the monarchs have seen a population decline since the beginning of the 1990s with climate change and increased urbanization. And according to some reports, the population has stabilized. The International Union for Conservation of Nature has upgraded the species from endangered to vulnerable. In the US, obese people in the top ranks face a persistent pay gap compared to their slim counterparts. New data reveals that obese people in white-collar jobs earn about 12% less than their peers with a healthy weight, while obese men in white-collar jobs make 12% lesser than their slimmer colleagues. And for the women, the disparity is even bigger. Obese women earn a whopping 19% lesser than their counterparts with a healthier weight. Now, the research accounted for various factors that can influence the earning potential of a person, including race, age, and marital status. The findings bring to surface the existence of fat prejudice in American corporations, leading obese people to miss out on billions of dollars in earnings. New York kicked off the Jewish celebration of Hanukkah by lighting the largest menorah in the world. Tourists and New Yorkers have gathered to see the 36-foot-tall menorah. It has been designed by Israeli artist Yaakov Agam and certified by the Guinness World Records as the world's largest. Now, Jews around the world traditionally celebrate Hanukkah with 8 nights of celebrations. Hanukkah is also the subsequent rededication of the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. The US dollar plummeted against the Japanese yen after the Bank of Japan signaled that it would scrap its negative interest rate regime this month. The Japanese currency strengthened against all rivals but gained most against the US dollar. And the euro, the Aussie and the Kiwi all gained against the greenback as markets bet that interest rates in the US may have peaked and that a rate cut cycle could begin as early as the first half of 2024. Shell said that it sees a $5 billion offshore oil investment opportunity in Nigeria and pledged to spend a further $1 billion in 5 to 10 years to boost natural gas output for domestic supplies and exports. Nigeria is Africa's top energy producer and is seeking to increase investments in its energy-rich sector. Following its sanctions against Russian businesses and imposing a price cap on Russian oil for its invasion of Ukraine, the European Union has now granted more autonomy to member states to halt gas imports from Russia and Belarus. Now, that means any member state will be able to block companies from Russia and Belarus from obtaining space in their gas pipelines and liquefied natural gas terminals.